Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Atlas Baker. I'm one of the co-founders here at Spectacles. And unlike our prior webinars, today is just all me. So I'm going to play both the introducer and the host, the presenter for all of today. Today, we're covering creating custom map visualizations in Looker. This is a thing that many people probably use the map visualizations by default, but have often never extended them for other use cases that you may have inside your orgs. And it's actually something that can be really powerful and not that complicated to set up. And so really excited to jump into this today and show you how you can kind of fully leverage this across your Looker projects. Before I jump in, a couple points of admin. We run these webinars every 2 weeks. I know many of you will have attended some of them before. They are really not focused on Spectacles, on us as a company. They're really for the Looker community to discuss Looker topics, get everyone together, and talk about things that are relevant to the day-to-day experience of Looker users, particularly Looker developers and admins. And so in the next 2 weeks, in the next 4 weeks, in the 2 next webinars, we've got multi-instance scaling for native API and embedded use cases at Scopely. So that's going to be a team from Scopely are going to come on and talk to us about how they've grown their Looker instance to multiple instances for different use cases and kind of how they thought about that process. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to be teaming up with the team at Metaplane to talk about how you kind of talk about data quality ROI and how all of you, when you need to make the case for people internally inside your organizations for the work that's, I guess, less sexy, that people around your work may understand a bit less. We're going to talk through kind of like how you can have those conversations, how you can justify that, both kind of qualitatively and quantitatively. If you want to sign up for any of those, head to spectacles.dev/webinars. The data quality ROI one's actually not quite up there yet, but will be in the next couple of days. But you can always sign up for all of our webinars there. Who am I? So my name's Dylan Atlas Baker. I'm one of the co-founders here at Spectacles. I've had the joy of being a Looker user for about 7 years. I was part of one of the first big enterprise rollouts of Looker in about 2016 here in the UK. And since then, have used it both in-house in a number of places and did freelance consulting for a number of years and have used it at dozens of companies, helped them set it up, help them roll it out. And that's really the experience that I'll be drawing on today to talk to you about custom map visualizations. And then finally, just some news from us. We did a webinar on this about a month ago, but the team at Spectacles have just released a brand new LookML linter. So the linter can help you ensure that your LookML aligns with the style guide that you want internally. It can really quickly find these things on every pull request or on a schedule, whatever you want. You can see an example here of a measure that the linter is saying should have a description, should start with either total or sum because it's a sum type measure. It's really extensible. It ships with about 20 default rules. You can very easily create your own custom rules. And we're really excited to have it go live today. So we'll be, if you sign up for this, you'll get an email about it in about an hour after this webinar finishes. But as I said, we're really, really excited to have it live. It's a big kind of new feature as part of the platform. And if it's something that you're interested in, if you're a customer of ours, it'll be live in your instance today and you can find all our docs. And as I said, we'll be sending an email about all of that later. But if you're not a customer, if you're on this webinar because you're a Looker user and maybe aren't as familiar with the Spectacles platform and you are interested in this, it takes almost no time to set up and we'd love to hear from you. So you can head to our website, you can book a demo, you can sign up directly there, whatever you'd like. We'd love to have a chat with you. We're rolling it out. We've been rolling it out for customers the last couple of weeks as part of the beta and the feedback's been awesome. So I'll leave that there. But if linting your LookML, enforcing a style guide really efficiently across your instance is something that's of interest to you, we'd love to hear from you. And then the final thing before I get into the agenda is what I shared before we kind of properly kicked off, is that all of the Q&A and all the conversation for today's webinar is going to happen in our Slack. We found that works more effectively than doing it in Zoom itself. Allows people to kind of thread things and things like that. So if you're not that yet there, I've just dropped the link in the chat again. Go sign up there, head to the webinar custom map viz channel. It's where you'll be able to ask questions for the Q&As. It's where you can have discussions with other attendees as part of this. And I think that's the last bit of admin from me. So let's jump in. I appreciate you all bearing with me for all that. So today's all about creating map visualizations in Looker. It's all about particularly custom map visualizations, how you can go beyond what is the standard default in Looker to create really typically like beautiful or certainly interactive and useful map viz in Looker. And so we're kind of going to do this in 4 chunks. The first thing we're going to do is just talk about some of the default functionality in Looker today, which some people may not be aware of. We're then going to talk about, for what is, for most people, likely going to be a new file format, which is TopoJSON or GeoJSON. This is a way that you can kind of define areas on maps, and it's one of the core things that Looker uses for these map visualizations. And we're going to talk about kind of what that looks like and how it's going to be useful to us. We're then going to talk through the steps of how you actually implement a custom map layer and talk about how that works in Looker. And most of the time, then going to be spent in a demo. The slides should be done pretty quickly. And what we're going to show in the demo is kind of covering all this. Standard map viz, how you go and find the relevant topo or GeoJSON files for you, or how you can generate your own, and then how you implement that in your Looker instance. If you have any questions as we go, please fire them away in Slack. I'll both try to answer them as we go, but also team members from Spectacles are also in there and can help you out. Perfect. Let's jump in. So many of you may be familiar with this already, but Looker ships with its own map visualization. Uses, I think, Google Maps under the hood, as you can see here. And it's a really effective way to be able to visualize geographic data. So here in this example, you can see that we've got, this is from a demo e-commerce data set that we're going to be dealing with later. We've got users who have a country attribute on them. And so we've got an explorer here that says what country are the users from, and how many do we have? And so you can see the data here down the side. And then because this is geographic data, and it is one of the ones that Looker supports out of the box, countries, it will, if you go into the visualization and click the map, it will generate this by default. And so you can see that it does a bit of a heat map from the lowest, being 1 in green, to the highest being about 27,000 in red. And you can display this information really easily if you've got this data set up in your data sets. And it can be a really useful tool when you're dealing with geographic data to help people visualize these things. That it can be, growth rates by region. It can be order counts by region. It can be where you've got the most salespeople or sales performance by region. It can really be whatever you want, as long as you've got a dimension that can map to one of these things. I'm going to talk about which types of dimensions those can be. You can do really whatever you want here. Map it across map it across your dashboards, and really kind of get that going really, really quickly. And so the way that you do that, actually, let's start here. There's 5 types of default map layers in Looker. So these are ones that you can use right away. So countries, that top one is what you're seeing here on this slide. But there's 4 others. So there's UK postcode areas. So if, like me, you live in the United Kingdom, postcode areas are the first 2, first 1 or 2 letters as part of your postcode. So I live in, I won't say my exact postcode. I used to live in SW147LB. The postcode area is just the SW there. So if you live in the UK, I'm sure that means something to you. And if you don't, it may not mean a ton to you. But you can also do US states. That's hopefully straightforward to everyone. US counties, which stands for federal, the FIPS bit stands for Federal Information Processing System, I think. And it's just a way to assign a numeric value to counties across the US. And then it can also do zip codes. And so if you live in the UK or the US, or you just got country data, or you do business in any of those countries, you can use all of these by default out of the box in Looker, which is exactly what I've done here. And so to do that, you only have to make one change to your dimensions. So if you have a dimension that has data in the right format that maps to one of those 5 things, you're going to add this 4th line down here called map layer name. And when you do that, it tells Looker when you go and use that dimension in a query and go and use the map visualization in Looker, it's going to just apply those, map the measures that you have there to whatever map layer you've applied. And so here you would apply countries, US postcode areas, US states, US counties, FIPS, or US zip code tabulation areas. And from there, it's as simple as building the visualization in the Looker UI as you would for any other visualization. And in the demo later, I'm going to show you exactly how you go about doing that. So that brings us to the next question, which is, let's say you don't want to use one of those 5. You have either, you want to go maybe more granular. So in the UK, the next granularity down from the postcode is what we call a postcode district. So it's both the letters plus the first set of numbers. So in the SW147LB, context, it'd be SW14. And it just allows you to do some analysis, whatever it might be, at a slightly more granular level. Or you have some, geographic divisions that matter to your organization specifically that may be non-standard, and you want to visualize those in Looker. So TopoJSON or GeoJSON is there are two kind of related file types. TopoJSON actually was derived from GeoJSON, which came first, and it's a way of mapping effectively arcs and areas on maps with kind of coordinates. And so you can see here, this is from a tool called geojson.io, which we're going to show later as part of the demo. And you can kind of map areas, and it generates this giant JSON that is largely not human readable in any kind of meaningful way, but machines and tools like Looker know what to do with them to map things across. And so the key thing as part of generating custom map visualizations is you need to either find or generate these types of JSON files, add them to Looker, and give Looker a bit of context as to how it can use that file. But then you can use any one of these files you want in your visualizations, as long as you've got a dimension that maps up from the data in here to the dimensions in your database. And so let's talk about what that looks like. So there's actually a number of ways you can do this. One is that you can add the file directly to your code base. So you'll see here, we're kind of referring to a file that is in our code base. You can actually also just point to a URL. So if the file's hosted somewhere and might get updated by other people and you want to kind of get those updates, you can also generate a map layer with that. But at its core, what you do in Looker to generate these custom map layers is in a model file, you will have a key called map layer, you will give it a name, and then at the very least, you will point it to a file or a URL. So we talked about kind of postcode districts earlier, but we've also got UK parliamentary constituencies or parliamentary wards. You can find these TopoJSON or GeoJSON files for almost anything that you'd possibly want. A lot of people have produced them and just put them on the internet. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But then what you can do with this map layer is you can assign it to a dimension. So if you've got a dimension that matches up with UK postcode districts, you can tell Looker, hey, when I generate a map visualization with this dimension, you should use this TopoJSON file or GeoJSON file to render the visualization that I want. This will, if it isn't making a ton of sense so far, it likely will in the demo that's coming up. There's a number of other things here that you can assign to these map layer keys, both the URL, as I talked about, but occasionally you need to tell it which specific key in the GeoJSON you actually need, kind of should match up with your dimension, or the min zoom level, max zoom level. You can make it very flexible. But for the most part, you can typically, for well-structured TopoJSON or GeoJSON that you'll find on the internet, you can typically just get away with either file or URL, and it'll all pretty much work out of the box from there. So quick whirlwind tour of the slides, really to prime what we're going to spend most of our time doing, which is a demo of how this actually works in Looker. Let me quickly check and find for questions. Let's start right at the beginning. And let me zoom in for all of you. So what I've got here, because the UK makes this public, is I have a bunch of data from the sale of homes, apartments, whatever it might be, across the UK across a number of years. And so we've imported this into our BigQuery instance. And if I click run here, you'll see exactly what we were just seeing, which is each row represents the sale of a home on a specific date, specific estate type. But most importantly, we have the address and we have the postcode. And so what we were talking about earlier is, in this case, this is a UK postcode. RG makes up the postcode area. RG1 makes up what we call the postcode district, and then you can get more granular from there. I forget exactly what the name for each additional step is. And so what's cool about this is data that might be interesting to us, depending on what type of business we run. We may be making bets on the UK property market, or maybe you're using it personally and you want to figure out what areas have accrued the most value in the past or have had the most sales in the past, whatever it might be. And so what we're going to do is we're going to load this to Looker. We're going to generate a view file in Looker and start trying to visualize this data in interesting ways. And so if I head across here, I've done some of that work already. And let me take a zoom in. This is a demo project that we use, and I've added a view here called raw house sales, which is pulling from that same table in BigQuery. And Looker, as it does, as many of you will be familiar, auto-generates fields for every column that lives in the table. And then I've added two more here. So we've got this postcode that's coming directly from the table. But to map to, let's say, a postcode area or a postcode district, we need to extract certain bits of information from the postcode. We need to get it to those first one or two letters, or the first one or two letters and the numbers that come before the space. And so I've done that here. The first one I've done with a bit of regex. So I've generated the postcode area. I'm basically just saying grab the first one or two letters from the postcode. This is all in BigQuery. The regex function will be slightly different depending on what warehouse you're on. And then postcode district's actually easier because you're just going to split on the space and grab the first half. And so what this gives us is a bunch of information like this. And so we're going over to the Explorer that's been generated. I've gone into our model. I've generated an Explorer. That is what I'm opening here. And if we click postcode, postcode area, and postcode district, hopefully that will highlight exactly how this works and how that SQL is working. It's a slightly large table. It's a lot of house sale data, but this should generate in just a second. There you go. So hopefully this all makes sense to you. You can see the full postcode, and then we're extracting the postcode area and the postcode district. Now, the thing I'm, let's say, most interested in is by postcode area, I want to know the number of sales between, let's say, 500 and 600,000 pounds sterling in the year 2020, which is one of the years that we have data for. And so we're going to generate that. Perfect. So we can see this data here in a tabular format. We've got our postcode area in the way that we expect, and we've got a count of sales within those price ranges within that year. Now, if I want to visualize that in a map, I would come here and I'd click that. But what Looker is going to tell us at this point is that we haven't instructed it that to tell it what map layer we want to use. You can also use type location for this, but in the case today, we're going to talk about these map layers. And so I need to go back to my lookml and assign a map layer to this postcode area dimension. And so if we head back here, as I talked about earlier, postcode areas are one of the built-in map layers that come with Looker. And so if we do map layer name and we do UK postcode areas, that's basically telling Looker, hey, if we're trying to visualize this dimension in a map, go and use this, GeoJSON, TopoJSON file that's in the back end to do this. We haven't had to add anything else to our Looker project. This just ships out of the box. So I'm going to click validate lookml, make sure I've done everything correctly. And I'm going to come back here and I'm just going to rerun this query. And now that we have assigned that correctly to the right dimension, the right map layer, everything's going to work immediately here. And so you can see, not hugely surprisingly, those are relatively expensive homes. And so they are mostly sold in London or around London in what in the UK we'd call the home counties. And so we can really quickly with this visualize, the number of sales across the UK. You can highlight up over every postcode area. And assuming we had that postcode data, there's really only two steps. We needed to extract the right information from it in the SQL, and then we need to assign the right map layer. And so you can see how very quickly you can go from kind of raw data to a map in Looker. Now, the next thing I want to do is I actually, this is interesting, but I actually want it to be a little bit more granular. Some of these are very large areas. B for Birmingham here is a massive geographic area, as are a couple of these other ones down here. And so we want to get a little bit more granular to maybe a more standardized size and get a bit more information, because that's going to be most useful for whatever analysis here that we're doing. And so I'm going to remove this. We're going to add postcode district, and we're just going to run the query again. And so again, Looker can't visualize this because we haven't assigned a map layer to postcode district. And so I come back here and I think about, applying map layer name, and then I start UK postcode and I go, oh yeah, Looker doesn't ship that by default. And so I'm going to need to start going down the route of a custom viz. And this is where a lot of this can get, particularly interesting. And as I talked about earlier, the two things you need to do are to generate a map layer, typically with a JSON file of some sort, and then assign it to the dimension. There are a couple resources out there that will have a lot of the TopoJSON files that you want. This repo, and we'll share this with all the attendees afterwards, is a repo that has a lot of these files. And so this is typically where wrong repo. TopoJSON GitHub. There we go. This one, which is the one that we'll share with everyone, has a list for a whole range of countries of different TopoJSON files that you can get, whether it's Belgian provinces, Benelux countries, mostly like departments or areas within each country. Some have more, some have less. And so typically when either we're doing this internally or we're recommending someone else do it, this is typically where we recommend people go. And the US actually has a ton of this information, both at a federal kind of national and state level. So if you're doing stuff in the US, actually there's tons of data available to you. You'll likely find stuff here for other countries. For the UK, you can find counties, for example, but sometimes you need to search a bit further. And so what we can see here is that in the UK, which is the area that we're doing this for, there isn't postcode districts. It's not something that they've added here. Theoretically, I could go find it and open a pull request and have them hopefully merge it in here, but I haven't yet done that, and no one else has either, and they haven't added it themselves. So typically what you do from there is you would search something like, you'd open a new tab and you go UK postcode district TopoJSON. You'd search something like that, and typically you'll be able to find what you want pretty easily. As I said earlier, a lot of people have put this stuff on the internet. It's useful for a whole range of BI tools and other use cases. So I can see that this first link says UK postcode boundaries now available in TopoJSON format. And I'm going to head to the downloads page. And I can see here, files are available for areas and districts. So I'm going to click that. It's going to show me the data, because that's how I've got my browser set up. It's actually going to be a little big for it, because these files can be absolutely massive. And so in the effort to not crash Firefox, but what I would do is I'd save that, and then I'm going to load it into Looker. And so that's exactly what we're going to do now. You're not going to see the next bit I'm doing just because I'm doing it in my Finder, but I'm grabbing the file that I've downloaded, and I am pasting it across into the Looker IDE. And so I'm dragging it here. So what you can see is I've just downloaded that file and I've put it in the IDE. And what that means now is we can create a map layer that uses that JSON file, and hopefully we can use to visualize. And this is kind of the first of really two steps in order to build a custom viz. I'm going to delete this line so that it lets me save. And I'm going to go to my model file where these map layers need to exist. Now I'm going to put this directly in the one model in this project, but if you're running multiple models in your Looker project, I'd often recommend generating kind of like a placeholder LookML file where you generate all the map layers and then just import those into the other models. It means that you only have to define it in one place. So let's get in here. I'm going to do map layer. We're going to call this UK postcode districts. And it's going to prompt me for a file. And I'm going to put postcode district.json. If you find yourself doing a lot of these maps, I'd recommend putting them in a folder called maps or something like that. It'll just make the management of them a little easier. But this is a small project, and so for the moment, I don't mind having it there. And so now that I've saved that, I'm going to go over here. And I am going to find that field. And now I'm going to be able to set this up in the way that we wanted. It doesn't always autocomplete, but UK postcode districts is what we put in the other file. I'm just going to double check that. And we should, assuming I've validated everything and everything works, then be able to head back here, refresh this page, or rerun the query. Perfect. And we're now going to see this at a much more granular level. And I've actually hit a row limit, which is why this data is looking slightly sparse. And so I'm going to increase that by a magnitude of 10. And we're going to run that. And we should get some really lovely data here. And so as you can tell, most of this again happens in London. We're looking at kind of E10 Southeast, that's East London or Southeast London. But we've really easily been able to go online, find that file, load it into the Looker IDE, generate a map layer, assign that map layer to a dimension, and then just come back and run our query. And so you can do this for, as I said, really kind of anything you want. This is a list that I'd recommend starting at, but there's lots of other files of this sort that you'll find online. Now, one thing that we haven't really covered is what you want to do if you want to generate these from scratch. So if you aren't looking for something standard that someone else on the internet is likely to have produced, let's say you've got really specific like geographic regional breakdowns for your sales reps across some country or things like that, you can also generate these yourself. The service we recommend for this, or certainly I'd recommend for this, is one called geojson.io. And what it effectively allows you to do is map areas. And let me zoom in to make sure I've closed that. What you can see there is I've generated an area, and let's say this is the area that one of our sales reps is responsible for, or something like that. And it starts generating the JSON for us over here. And so I can then go add more lines and generate, as complex a map breakdown as I want, and then use that in the Looker code base in the Looker IDE to get that set up. This is can be like a little bit of a fiddly process. And so if you can get away with using one of the ones that you find online, we definitely recommend that. But if you have a really unique use case, you can definitely do this. You just need to kind of figure your way through it. And that is the end of the demo portion. And so I'm going to head back to the slides here and go into the Q&A. And so if you have any questions about anything that we've just covered, please head over to Slack and ask them there. That's where I'm going to open up in just a second and have a look and try to answer your questions. Perfect. Is Scotland excluded because you don't have data on it, or it uses a different postcode districting system? That's a very good question. I don't know the answer. Yeah, I don't think it's that no homes in that price range in that year were sold in Scotland. Houses can be cheaper there than in certain areas in the UK, England, I suppose. I imagine it is that we probably don't have data. I think it is that the sale data that we've downloaded is managed on a not in a UK basis, but probably an England basis. And so we probably only have data in the underlying data set that is from England. And I think it didn't even have Wales if I head back to it. Yeah, I think it was just England. So that'll be the reason why there. Does the GeoJSON have to be a file URL, or could it be generated via query? No, you do, as far as I'm aware anyway, have to have the file, the URL. I imagine you could generate it via query, but probably more complex than I'd want to bite off. Yeah, you will need to have that either hosted on the internet somewhere or in the repo itself. Question from Ben. Is there somewhere where all webinar recordings live? Yes. So on the page where you signed up for this, as of tonight, when the webinars happened, or tonight my time, whatever part of the day it is for any of you, we will put the YouTube video on the sign up page on our website. So if you head to, and I can put the link up in a second, but if you head to spectacles.dev/webinars, you'll see all the past ones there. And for all of them that have been completed, you'll be able to see both the slides and the recordings as well. And hopefully a useful resource for all of you. We've done, this has got to be our 6th or 7th, and we do them every week, so we'll soon have a big repository of these recordings. Question is, what would you recommend for a file larger than 20 megabytes? You mentioned hosting it somewhere. Any chance you can demo that? I probably don't have a way of demoing the process of hosting it right now. There's a handful of ways you could do that. There's services that'll do that for you. You could probably just put it in S3 But I think actually the easiest may be to put it in a different public Git repo, because I think if this I may be able to check, but yeah, let's see. Let's go back into a live demo. This can only go well. Give me a sec. So I think on this example, these, if you click them, you get this file. And I believe there's a way to serve the raw file in here. And this is probably the easiest way, is to put it, either find it from a Git repo and do this, or do it yourself, put it in some other public Git repo, and point it to your own. Large files can occasionally slow down the Looker IDE, and so it's a reasonably good idea to host these elsewhere. It also means that you can, to the extent that it matters, update the TopoJSON without altering the code, making a change to the code base, or doing anything like that. Let me head back here. All right, next question. If someone wanted to customize a map viz even further, for example, something other than a heat map, what would you recommend exploring next? This is a tricky question for my co-founder, who may be trying to stitch me up. Josh, did you have something in particular in mind? I think the thing that's going to make these map vizzes the most interesting is actually the measure that goes into it. It's typically like what you're aggregating on is going to be the most interesting in my experience. At its core, there's only so far I think you can extend these map vizzes in Looker, but at its core, it's going to have to take a single dimension that is assigned to something on the map and then take one measure. And so I think it's really about the data that you're putting into that and what map you're using. You can get, there are other map vizzes. If you want to get into D3, Looker lets you, what we're talking about today is customized map layers within the standard Looker, like map viz. You could extend it to use D3 and do much more. If you wanted to be on a globe, like a circular globe or all that stuff, there are other JavaScript frameworks out there that would allow you to build a custom visualization, not a custom map layer, but like a custom viz itself that you could do. It starts getting into much more like front-end software engineering, but it's definitely worth exploring if you want to make this stuff like really slick. You need something embedded that is really custom or anything like that. Josh, if you had another angle you wanted me to take that question, let me know. Cool. Question saying, what if your shapes live in a geometry column within, for example, your PostGIS database? Do you need to go through a JSON file, a GeoJSON file? I don't know the answer to that question, unfortunately. Jenna, if you join the Slack, it's definitely something that we could get you the answer to, but I understand what you're saying. There's kind of, particularly in Postgres, kind of native geography-based data types. I don't know of exactly how Looker treats those. I haven't personally seen a way where it can kind of pull out the native kind of geometry type columns, but that's not to say that there isn't a way to do that. And then another one, is there any way to use area or district layers within one dimension, depending on the user's wish? So the question is if you've got a single field, could you kind of have them selectively pick what you want? Trying to figure out in my head if there's a way to do this with Liquid. Theoretically, and this is really just me kind of figuring this out loud, you would need to have you need to be able to dynamically point it to different dimensions. I'm not sure there is a way to do that, because I don't think you can put conditional Liquid in the map layer field, though maybe you can. That would certainly be the first thing I would explore, and just have it controlled by a parameter or something like that. But I think it is possible you would need to kind of have two distinct dimensions and have them kind of just pick one or the other. Again, definitely something I'm happy to kind of keep exploring, and in the Slack, happy to keep that conversation happening. And then probably time for a couple more. So one more question: does Looker support attaching map layer to categorical dimensions value? Use case agent has a unique service area. Would you need to create a dimension with that custom map layer for each agent? No. So the way this works, and I didn't go into a ton of detail here, but in the JSON, there's like right, at least in TopoJSON, there's an arcs configurate. There's like an arcs key and then an objects key. And so in the objects, you basically map a name to a set of arcs that make up an area. And so in theory, as long as you're happy going into the JSON and kind of figuring your way through this, you can generate the arcs, or you could use pre-existing arcs, or it sounds like maybe they're pre-existing service areas, if they're cities or something like that. And then you just need to go and either edit the existing objects or create new objects that use the relevant arcs. And so you can assign anything you want here. The JSON's kind of a little gnarly, and so there's probably some ways with other languages. I would probably try to do it in Python to generate this or something like that. But you can make it use any name. So you can, my name's Dylan. If you wanted to assign London to Dylan and New York to Josh and Boston to Dermot, you could generate TopoJSON that pulls from those names so that it immediately can leverage the map viz by just having a dimension with those people's names in it. It's just a case of manipulating the JSON in the right way. And then the question is, final one I think we'll do today. What if you have data covering zip codes of several countries at the same time? Would you need to merge the TopoJSON files with the zip codes of these different countries into a single file? Yes, as far as I'm aware, you would need to. I mean, it shouldn't be too hard because you basically just combine things from the different keys. So the merging of it shouldn't be immensely complex. But yes, I think you'd need to kind of create this superset TopoJSON file if you wanted to have like US zip codes, UK postcodes, Canadian postcodes, Parisian, arrondissement, like whatever it is, you would kind of go and find those files and combine them yourself. Awesome. I'm gonna stop the questions there. Thank you very much. A bunch of really great questions, and really, as ever, appreciate all of your involvement. And just cruise through a couple final slides. As I said earlier, we've got some upcoming webinars. We'd love to see you there. Hopefully you get value from these. And so you can head over to spectacles.dev/webinar to sign up for any future webinars. They are every 2 weeks, every other Wednesday at this time at 5 p.m. UK time, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, or some other time for your time zone if it's not one of those. And then finally, just to reiterate, the really big news from us today is that our linter is going live. It's really awesome. Josh, my co-founder, who's I'm hoping still watching this, has put a lot of effort into kind of the underlying code base. It's been a major piece of work. As someone who's used Looker for a long time, it's genuinely very slick to use. It's made a difference to our own Looker development internally already. And so we're really excited to get it out into the world. And so if you're a customer, you'll get an email in the next hour or so explaining how you can set it up. But if you're not a customer, book a demo, come chat with us in Slack, whatever you want. Would love to get this out into as many people's hands as possible. If you're interested in Spectacles, come and chat with us, whether it's for the linter or checking your SQL, checking your content validator, making sure your Looker code is error-free. Spectacles does a whole range of things that can really improve the development experience in Looker. So that is it for me today. We're at a full 45 minutes, I think. Once again, thank you all very much for attending. The attendance that we've had for all of these has been amazing, and the engagement that we've had from the Looker community for all of these has been incredible. So appreciate you coming out to all of these, and hopefully we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Have a great day, everyone.